Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Monday, January 1st, 2024. So we've made it to yet another year, or whatever little that actually matters. It's just a number in reality, so yeah. There is still likely not going to be a ton of video game news, but there is, at least on Yu-Gi-Oh, this New Year's Day celebration bundle that ends January 9th. I'm glad they didn't say it ended like January 2nd and you had to actually log in. That would be fairly annoying and probably wouldn't work for pretty much any game. Yeah, I don't think there's a single game out there that should be so stringent that it would punish people for not playing on the New Year's Day. It's been a long while since we've had a bundle, and these bundles tend to not be very helpful, but they are probably some of the best deals that you can get overall. Like, I don't care really about the wallpaper here. It looks like it's a picture of more of a Japanese going to a shrine New Year's event that doesn't really translate to the rest of the world. And let's see what cards are actually included. And this is really where it's going to fall apart for me, is that all I could really say as far as the viability or usefulness of any of these cards is whether or not I recognize any of these cards. But also, if it was going to be a really, really good deck, I shouldn't be able to recognize any of these cards. I think I've seen a card like this, but this is probably a newer version. It's a Rydo Link monster, it looks like. Because if I did recognize the cards, then they're probably not in the new meta of new cards. This is kind of an interesting art element because you generally don't just see a human, even in like religious garb. And interestingly, it is kind of more of a, I would say, Catholic religious garb than Egyptian religious garb, which you do tend to see Egyptian religious garb if you're going to see any kind of religious garb. And since the Egyptian religion is for the most part dead, I would say there might be 2 or 3 people still believing in it. It's hard to really even call it a religion anymore. And yeah, pretty easy to not realize that Egypt, as far as we can tell, was a theocratic state government where the pharaoh is straight up being exalted as a god, a living god. Now I do recognize Sky Striker. Some of these cards, maybe. Newer versions of Relinquished. Inherently, I think 25 plus years into Yu-Gi-Oh, what they failed to do is establish some really good starting characters in as far as cards, and then evolve them more frequently over time. And instead they tried to throw spaghetti at the wall. Here you have a completely different art style, and it just created a situation in which there are 10,000 cards and 7,000 of them are not playable. Blackluster Soldier, I recognize. And even of the unplayable 7,000 cards, there's probably less than 1,000 that are even memorable, which it really should be one or the other. I recognize this card. So it does look like there's some decent cards in this collection. And since this is a bundle, you're going to get potentially 3 copies of each of these cards. IP Masquerena is a card I recognize. So this might be a bundle of cards that makes a terrible deck on its own. I think I recognize this, but gives you a decent amount of cards that you could make your own deck with, which wouldn't be a terrible thought. Certainly is to sell a bundle. Access code talker. Some of these might be different art styles too. Here we have one of the Tri-Brigade characters that I play. Yeah, I would really like to be able to say for a new year I'm going to build a new deck, but it's not really going to happen. There's actually a lot of cards coming up here. This list seems longer than it should be. So we may find out the price here is fairly high. We have a new Tri-Brigade card that I haven't seen. Yep. I would say that's probably another place where Yu-Gi-Oh! Failed, is that the cards should either be very visually interesting that you just want to look at them and see them for years and years going forward. Of course, they never knew that Yu-Gi-Oh! Was going to last even a year, let alone 25 plus years. It's probably closer to 30 years as far as the actual manga. But yeah. But yeah, if you were making a new card game, that definitely should be a thing. If you're going to make dud cards, they should be very visually interesting, and then they should be the foundation at which you evolve a dud card into a better card, and then take that visually interesting character and evolve them better. Or at least evolve the visuals. In Magic, you have the 2/2 bear problem, in which they constantly change the art and change the name of a card that is a, like, costs 2 mana, does 2 attack, does 2 defense, or something like that, and was originally a bear. So why not make the bear very visually interesting and then evolve the visuals on the 2/2 bear every time you re-release it, but still make it a bear, so it has some kind of connection? Or why not evolve the 2/2 bear as a card so that there's some way in which it's really much more playable? Oh, you know what's going on here? I just realized. We're just going through all the cards. Yeah, because this is just going to give you a 10 pack of master packs, isn't it? 30 master pack cards for 2024 gems, which is worth it. But overall, not the best deal. It's a good start or a good boost, but all of the things I just said, as far as, oh, that would be that's an interesting card to get, gets thrown out the window because I'm not actually going to get any of those cards. Now, good thing I didn't drain my gems all the way down to 0. So far we just really have a guarantee of 2 super rares, ultra rares. I guess they're ultra rares. But as we actually open this packs, what we're going to want to keep an eye out for is which ones are labeled new and which one gives us keys that will then open up other secret packs, which will then be tempted, although perhaps not very tempted, because they really haven't added any new cards lately. So this is Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon card. I would have thought I already had that, but that is another problem with being somewhat familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh, which I think a lot of people would be familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh, is that you've probably seen a lot more Yu-Gi-Oh cards than you actually would own in Master Duel, unless you just are going to be a whale and spend thousands of dollars to make sure you own as many cards as possible, and it's just not really a value in that. I like, if I can say something nice about Marvel Snap, despite the fact that almost everything in Marvel Snap failed, in my opinion, failed to catch my attention at least. I like the concept in general of, as you fill out a collection, you get rewarded more for filling out that collection. So by finding new cards and seeing the news, in this, you're in Marvel Snap given a little bit of points. And at a certain level, I kind of enjoy even the idea of Marvel Snap having fewer cards and then the visuals on the cards evolving, but the way Marvel Snap did it was incredibly lazy and cheap, and just redundant, because in Marvel Snap you just have a card that has art, and then you have the frame break where the art is just zoomed in a little bit so it goes over the edges of the card, and then you have like a holographic edge, and there's like 5 to maybe even more different ways in which you evolve the art, but the art really doesn't change any. It just has some cheap, almost like After Effects effects added to them. Just cheap Photoshop tricks done to it to change the art. And then there are even more cheap randomized alternate versions of the cards, where it might be in black and white, for instance, and then you'll get that alternate art version of the card, and then you'll want to they want you to upgrade that alternate art version of the card. Although the card collecting gimmick around Marvel Snap is not really what kills Marvel Snap. What kills Marvel Snap is it's just not much of a card game. It's just not fun to play. Had they done the same gimmicks with the art style, I would have given Second Dinner a lot of slack and said, well, it's a new company and they obviously can't afford, wow, not a single master pack in this group. I would have given Marvel Snap some slack and said they just couldn't afford to do better art. I think what I would do is, if I was making a card game, is have one card art that is your starter card art, and then I would have a experiment with having a longer trail in which you have to evolve the cards up to some kind of final card art that is completely different. So there would just be a standard form, an ultimate form. If there was more budget later, maybe we would make a mega form on top of an ultimate form for all the cards, but that would be something I would probably hold back to at least the 1-year anniversary. And arguably I would like to see cards being evolved by being played, so it encourages people to play cards, because if I was making a new card game, I can't make 10,000 cards. I can make 1,000 cards at most, and so every card needs to be a lot more special and played a lot more. Even Marvel Snap, I think, fails at that because they have so many alternate art versions of the same card that it is not really worth your time to try and play the 5 different alternate art versions of a card. Marvel Snap, I think, also has a logical fallacy in that trading card players really love the art on their cards that much. A lot of it really is just recognizability. Like, you want to be able to look at it. Here we got an incredibly rare crystallized prism, ultra rare, which the prism effect in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not something I actually like. That's true for real world cards too. Some of the holographic effects and things don't make the art look better. Yeah. Thinking about Marvel Snap, it is a little crazy that since they've already got the Marvel license, that there isn't an inclusion of just like every single piece of cover art. There probably are even interesting pieces inside comics that you could take as art pieces to make cards from. If you just had a license where you could use all the art Marvel had ever made, then I mean, there's probably about 1,000 issues of different Spider-Man covers you could pick from. So that would just keep you busy forever, just scanning in or getting the scans that already exist of the cover art and saying, hey, you know what? This looks good. Let's use that for a art piece. And I'm still surprised that none of these Marvel games ever connect to any kind of service to actually read the comics. But it's not super surprising because the dirty secret is almost all comics from Marvel and DC suck, and they're just not relevant to the comics they want to sell now. They don't really have that big of an issue of a desire to sell old trades or make old trades of old comics or sell old comics and resell them or reprint them. So they want you to kind of only have this nebulous feeling that you like old comics without actually spending your time reading them. It would be the equivalent of Netflix effectively hiding the vast majority of its old content, which it sort of does, but you can still find it. But if Netflix took like Stranger Things Season 1 down so you had to watch Stranger Things Season 2, that'd be crazy. Speaking of crazy, Microsoft Defender is still finding this virus all over the place. Like, I don't know what to do. I went through a lot of the windows I had open and closed them, which in general just saved me RAM. But I still have this suspicion that somebody's website is infected. Whether it's Twitter or GameDeveloper.com or Gamatsu or Video Games Chronicle or somebody else's website that I just happen to have one page for. But yeah. You know what probably it is that there's a dropper virus that just drops code to another virus, and Windows Defender is not finding that dropper virus. I probably should close all of Firefox or reboot the computer into a safe mode of some sort and then try and run the scan. I think there's a way to reboot it and do a scan that way. So we have unlocked 21 different or 21 keys. They don't have to be different, and we've gotten a decent amount of new cards. We got, let's see, just 7 out of 30 packs, which just really just shows how incredibly rare ultra rare cards are. 7 ultra rares, and then looks to be about 14, maybe 10, yeah, 12 super rares. And then a large selection of rares, and then I imagine a even larger selection of normals, but a decent amount of new cards overall. I've never really been motivated to spend a large amount of time opening Master Duel packs in particular, because for the most part Master Duel packs are unlikely to give you cards that are actually playable. Perhaps it's an overstatement to say all the cards in the Master Duel packs are irrelevant, but you're just drawing from a very large pool there, and you could easily see them splitting Master Duel packs into different colors, where there would be Master Duel dark packs that guarantee dark cards, Master Duel light cards. That way, if you want to play dark cards, you could play it that way. You could probably even split between types. There could be Master Duel insect card packs and such, or dragon packs for people who just want dragons. We've also unlocked several of these, and at least one of these seems like they are new. And if I was to guess, it might be a couple of them are new, like Secret Fighters I don't recognize. So let's just, well, if we click OK here, you can't purchase this anymore. So then back to the shop we go. Secret packs. We have slightly less than 3,000 gems, so we're really not in a good position to buy any of these. This is not a particularly great candidate, but it's a decent one enough. The good news is I have enough cards that where a lot of these would just be a no. This is a no. Or over the course of the next year, this one apparently has been updated, we may find that this is a no too. I may find over the course of this next year that there are so many cards I already have that I would be potentially just pursuing one ultra rare copy of this or one ultra rare copy of this, and it just doesn't matter if I already have most of the rares in normals. That would still be a no. So far most of these are no. I already have too many copies of the card, and arguably maybe there isn't enough overlap between the missing cards so that I could find a packet. This again would be a no. That would make sense to put 3,000 gems into, even though I don't have 3,000 gems. And I can say, comparing this game to Memento Mori, Memento Mori very often, this is no too, has a option somewhere where you can get a few more gems. Whereas Yu-Gi-Oh, once you've done those daily quests, still pretty much a no. Yeah, once you've done your daily quest, though, on Yu-Gi-Oh, this is a no, then there is zero options really to get any more gems other than just winning 3 games or paying real world money. But yeah. Compared to the mobile game, which I'm still playing Memento Mori, this might be a yes. You're getting easily 3-4 pulls of a random pull a day, whereas Yu-Gi-Oh! If you do all the quests, maybe you could get 1,000 gems to do one 10-pack. But more likely, this is probably a good candidate. More than likely. It's kind of interesting here. You have humanoid characters in Yu-Gi-Oh! You just don't see that very often. Yeah. If you do all the dailies in Yu-Gi-Oh! You're probably getting 4 or 5 individual packs that you can afford. And so it's 2. This would be possibly another candidate. It's every 2 or 3 days that you can possibly get 1,000 points. And my numbers actually may be fairly off here because I only log in every other day usually, so the daily quests may be even worse. This again might be somewhat of a candidate, but still probably no. And that's another thing that's annoying about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that there is a insignificantly small amount of gems. I think it's like 40 gems for logging in, as far as a login bonus. And it highlights how Konami just doesn't really know how to make mobile games compared to the more successful mobile games that do have a lot of gimmicks and multiple currencies. This game has only really one currency in the free tickets element. Yeah, I think at this rate, none of these need to be engaged with. None of those said one free draw or anything like that. So yeah, that's 1,000 here. That's 1,000 there. I think I'd just leave everything as it is. Rank seasons and all of that doesn't seem like it's changed at all. Alright, the system, now would be the time to really change the system. It could use some adjustments. In particular, what it needs to do is, instead of saying if you were a master in the previous season you go to Diamond Tier 5, it needs to just say you go back 5 spaces wherever you are. So if I happen to be Diamond Tier 1, then I'll go to Platinum Tier 1, not Platinum Tier 5, which would make it much nicer for me and make it feel like your struggle actually matters. Alright, so yeah, I come in every 3 days and you're getting 40, 80, 120 gems there. Maybe if you stack them up, 240 gems. That's 2 packs. Your login is 20 points, not even 40 per day. It's just pathetically low. A Duel Live gives you 5 gems. It feels like that's even gone down. Like, if this was going to be 5 gems, then it really should be the 5 gems every time you watch a Duel Live. Which perhaps there's an argument there to just let your computer, if that was the case, just leave your computer running with Duel Lives going on. I'd also like to see in 2024 this gift box mean something. I have been playing basically since day one. I've never seen the gift box used at all. It probably is used exclusively when you buy something from like the Apple Store or Google Play Store when you buy card packs. But as far as PC, I've never seen it used. Of course, I also haven't purchased any gems, and notably, there's still really not a good reason to pay anything at all. Like, this game financially is almost certainly a failure. Oh yeah, and I just kind of forgotten about this one completely, so let's, I guess, jump into this and see if we can win any better. Where we have 2024 attack or health, I believe is the situation. So yeah, I'd say that 2024 bundle giving you a deck box art, which you don't even see deck box art on this screen, so you can't really show it off very easily. So yeah, both players have 2024 health, which just inevitably means that whoever goes first has a decent chance of winning because they've made special decks that will simply do damage. For the accountability section, over the past couple days, started to get back into the habit of programming some more, but before that I also was spending a lot of time organizing and cleaning my old refrigerator because I got the new refrigerator, and so I really the perfect time to just move everything from the old refrigerator. It is certainly speaking from a position of privilege to have two refrigerators, but one of them is incredibly custom half depth, cabinet depth, or I don't know what they actually call it as far as a refrigerator. It was difficult to find, to say the least, to fit in the alcove that was built. And so instead of the new refrigerator, it's like 18 cubic feet of volume, and the old one is probably about half of that, 9. It holds things, but it's not great. And there definitely are refrigerators that are pretty terrible like that, where there's the split refrigerators where there's a freezer on the left side and a refrigerator on the right, and there's just basically no room at all in the freezer section, and not really a significant amount of room in the refrigerator side either. But yeah, really the perfect time to just clean out the old refrigerator, wash it, and take all the food out and organize things while you're moving all the food out. So I spent a day doing that, on top of taking occasional breaks and starting to watch Eureka, which I clearly am on a let's watch old sci-fi channel shows. Not that that's going to be super successful. Even Eureka, which is, I think, pretty good overall, has some major problems in its later seasons. But yeah, I'm not really finding a lot of new things to watch at the moment, so I'm watching old TV. Also messed with my Chromecast a little bit more, installed that WireGuard VPN information. So now theoretically this Chromecast could be taken anywhere and to a different country, different house, and I'd still be able to watch my streaming services without any interruption, although using a VPN, a WireGuard VPN, potentially is going to slow down the streaming speed to an unreasonable amount. I'd just have to experiment with that. Really? Let's see. What do we have in here? Nothing. So, whoops. That may have been the wrong thing to do. Maybe I should have destroyed this. But yeah, after messing with the refrigerator and starting to watch Eureka, I got back into programming my Smart On Air sign some more. I had hoped that I could have used the internal libraries to do an SHA-256 encryption, but it wasn't working, so then I gave up on that and really just said, you know what, let's just see how much effort it would take to integrate the libraries that I was using before again in the new ESP IDF environment, and it wasn't that difficult once I put the time into that. So it's been a couple hours trying to use the internal library. It didn't work. Now the reason it didn't work potentially is that I just had the password wrong, and the reason I didn't have the password right is because the HTML web page was not loading and saving values correctly, and may still not be doing that. But after I recognized that, I have spent the rest of my time working on that. Inevitably, I think the problem is I have this incredibly long list of options for a pull down menu of different keys you can enter. It's like 600 different options, 600 different key inputs for a hotkey selection, and that creates a very long variable in the code that the web server is just having trouble loading, and so inconsistently it will sometimes load that part of the HTML and it sometimes won't, and instead of just kind of failing there, it just moves on and loads the rest of the HTML. So what that was creating was a situation where the inputs in the other parts of the HTML form, where you type in the password, were saving the wrong bits of information. Things were getting out of order, which really shouldn't be happening, but it still seems like it would. It is. So until just about 5 minutes before I started streaming, which I think I may have fixed it. It turns out the option tags in HTML are technically, with HTML4, self-closing, so you don't have to go bracket option, this is an option, it would be bracket option, close bracket, then some text, then bracket / option for a closing, and closing bracket for a closing tag, where certainly I was probably taught HTML2, if not 1, and everything had to have a closing tag back in the day. But they kind of eliminated that, which means that reduces a significant amount of text if I can just get rid of the closing tags, Um, might win here finally. We'll just see what happens here. Doesn't even really make sense how I lost there. Like, that felt like I should have just taken 2,000 damage, not 2,024. And that's just super irritating, to say the least, that you can have somebody win without even putting a monster on the field. Just because there's enough gimmicks in this game where you can do 2,000 or 3,000 damage. It's very important to really not bend your rules like this when there are so many cards that can be manipulated in that way. And all they really should have done is made it like 10,024, and then it would have been much more reasonable. Like here, 1,000 points there. I have literally no chance. Another 1,000 points there. And so really I should clearly just build a deck that does direct damage. Because there's no way I'm going to be able to win at this rate. Okay, let's create a new deck. Let's waste our time doing that. Let's see. What can we do as far as cards? We can start by trying to see if we have Firecracker. I mean, was it 2 words? Or do I have to properly spell it? We can do that, and you know, it doesn't kill me to generate 2. There. Let's see. Damage. This is just gonna take forever. Let's see if we can filter this down to just spells and traps. Okay. Let's see if maybe life would make more sense. Pay 2,000. Just see what we have that we can actually put in here. We may just end up crafting things. Offer your opponent a handshake if they accept it. Each player becomes half of their combined life points. Yeah, just a completely useless card here that is from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Cartoon, the first season series of the anime. Most of these have pay in the name. This is gonna suck. Just how much time this is gonna take. There we go. It's probably not really that useful. That one. Those blessings of the Nile might be useful in general with the Zodiac Tri-Brigade. But probably isn't. Oh, I just hate this so much. It's such a waste of time. Really. Such a waste of time to make no really useful deck. Like, this is gonna be completely useless. After 3 victories. So yeah, I'm still working on the programming on my Smart On Air side, but I am trying to move forward and just be closer to being finished and take that next step of making a listing and having the product sold, having the products fully built, moving it to enabling the encryption and making sure all that works. We're at like 22 points here. And a lot of this is going to straight up just be a case of I guess increasing my life points. Oh, this is such a wasteful thing to do, because I'm already at 50 minutes. I'm ready to stop playing Yu-Gi-Oh, and I've literally done nothing today other than purchase some cards. And play like one game. This card works with Yujo friendship and unity. Interesting. So maybe there is some kind of synergy. Technically, I could play with just 30 cards. Oh, this. Yeah, I just don't know how Konami can make this fun. Like, for me, personally. Maybe it is just me. Now, if you are a fan of looking at cards, maybe this is fun. But also I would say there is a situation here where for me, since I'm looking at this at a TV 8 feet away, it just is visually difficult to engage with looking at the cards or liking the art, and the art is never really that big. Even here, it's still fairly small. Whereas, I guess if I was playing with a with a cell phone, there would be more more of a chance of me looking at the images and enjoying looking at the image. But even at that, you have to admit that this is not an interface that is anywhere close to having the actual cards in your hand and enjoying the experience from that direction. So let's not waste any crafting points crafting anything if we can avoid that. And then we've got like 5 here. So then it is just going to be a matter of, let's just get rid of things that increase your health. There. Let's give that a try. More than likely, there's still a high level of thought that is put into the opponent's decks that are probably being shared online. And if I could just go online and copy and paste a code to import a deck, that would be great, but it's not the case. If I go first here, I might be able to win. But if I go second, I don't have any quick play cards at all. So on that aspect, any counters, any quick plays would be needed, and I imagine even my opponents here are not really building decks for counters and quick plays. They've inherently, by making this a separate duel, eliminated any need to be concerned about losing. There's no penalty for losing. If anything, what I should do is immediately surrender if I go second. It'll just save me a minute or two. That's a useless card. Okay. See if that helps in any way at all. It buys me enough time with 1,000 extra life points. Probably doesn't, because we're seeing 2 or 3 cards on average being strong enough to defeat me usually, so that would leave at least 3 more. Let's see, 1,000 here. Skips the next draw phase, put that down. So as soon as my next turn starts, I suspect that is enabled 800 to actually summon a monster and attack. This one also would increase the opponent's health if I had any cards in my hand, but surprisingly I don't. Meanwhile, while we're wasting time doing this extreme duel, I'd rather just be playing ranked duel. I guess I just activate this now, don't I? Discard, and win. Unless there's something he can do. Was that a duel that really deserved winning 20 gems, and or did it deserve winning a lot more considering how much I've struggled with it? I've probably played that first tier of duels 30 or 40 times. But clearly, I think anyone can see there's a major problem here where I spend 20 minutes having to build a custom deck I'll never use again, and then I'm going to win, potentially, 3 or 4 times over. Let's see if this works. Yeah, I wish I had more to say as far as the accountability section, other than I am spending time programming. It's just kind of boring programming. A lot of jumping between HTML and getting the web server to work and trying to fix the code as best as I can. And trying to get in a position where it's way more about testing things than it is about just fiddling with things. One of the things I'm fiddling with is increase your life points by 500 every time the monster returns to the field from the owner's hand. So unless he puts a light monster on his side of the field, I probably lost here. But I may not have lost this turn. Still, as far as games I'm playing on my phone, as far as if that's technically a countable section, I'm still playing Star Trek Lower Decks, which really has nothing going on at all. And I'm almost certainly going to be done with it by the end of January. Tinkafuma is still going fairly well, but I'm also fairly close to what feels like kind of an end game where Tinkafuma, I could see myself still playing it a year from now, but not really engaging with it much because there's just not going to be any more progress that can be made. It seems like the story mode only goes up to level 60 and then that is it. Even Memento Mori has that similar feel where it's either going to get incredibly grindy to get to those last bits of the story mode in Memento Mori, or there is or I am just going to kind of max out, and then it would be more of a stasis mode for Memento Mori also. Although in the case of Memento Mori, I could always just make a new save file on one of the different servers and start all over again, which is something that's not easy to do or encouraged. And I would have won that turn had I gone first. And that's going to be the problem here. And then 7 Mortal Sins Ecstasy is still very overwhelming with all of its elements. But I guess if I really was in stasis mode with every other game and stopped playing Star Trek Lower Decks because there's just nothing to do, particularly in the case of Star Trek Lower Decks, I could kind of stop playing now and come back 6 months later and just catch up. And that may very well be the way it goes. There is a little danger in all these mobile games I'm playing, just replacing the fact that I'm not playing any PC games, which is what I really want to be doing, but if I'm going to be on the PC, I need to finish the Smart On Air side. Of course, once I finish that, I do intend to get back to playing games, and I need to schedule some YouTube shorts at the very least, even before then. Here we have a Fear Anime 21 on the chat saying hi. Still. Oh, this is such a waste of time. Such a waste of time for just a dumb pack and 24 gems. This is another thing that really should have just been given away. I think for these kinds of duels in particular, there probably should be a loss counter anyways, where one victory gets you, say, 5 gems, and one loss gives you 1 gem, and so by simply having 15 losses, you would get 3 reward tiers. That would be my guess is the best way to do it. Okay, this one is not likely to activate. This one is something they could activate, but it would give me 1,000 points. This one would do 500 damage. Let's just do that and see if that works. I'm very surprised that the Legend of Bumbo, which I guess may have stopped airing, or maybe there's still going to be some episodes airing left, did as well as it did. I did not do particularly well playing that game, and I don't think I even really did a great job making content and criticizing it, but seems like it has more of a gameplay than I thought it would. Okay. No. What's this gonna do? Needs to play basically 2 more cards before I could activate this. Feel like I should have been able to trigger a card there, but apparently not. That's why I like to play card games in digital form factors, because that definitely would have been an argument had I been playing on the table. I would have said, wait a minute, we gotta look at the rules and the order of activation here, because it feels like I should have been able to activate my continuous trap card there and do something. Even though actually it probably would have helped anyway. Okay. Go ahead and set this. We'll activate this. That'll be 1,000. That was 800. Whatever. I think I've got it. Assuming he can't do something. Now just give me a couple more opportunities to activate this. Can't trigger itself always, but apparently it can trigger itself sometimes. Okay, one more terrible reward. 15 gems for that game. That took less than 3 turns, and 1 legacy pack, and 2 just random cards that are not worth anything because they're normal non-effect monsters. Suffice it to say, going into 2024, not really enjoying Yu-Gi-Oh! That much. And then, in all honesty, I think if I could find a different type of game, I probably would choose that in general. Something with dailies, something a lot more like Memento Mori, frankly. They would play itself, and I just wouldn't have to actively be engaged with it. It would need something with dailies, though, so there would be a reason to come back to it. It would need to be something. That probably is going to win for me, just getting an extra bit of health. Unless the guy just surrenders. Because he can end his turn, I'm going to skip my draw phase. I'm going to have no cards to play at all. So the power of these traps, can't possibly last that long. Just face down traps. I can't even seemingly activate this trap. Probably shouldn't anyways. This guy doesn't have any discarded cards. So the only reason I'd really activate that would be so it would stop bugging me, and if I did that, it would just take away the threat. Oh yes, there was one thing I was thinking about. In this January 1st of 2024, the new year doesn't mean anything really to me, but in that aspect, I don't think I'm really going to do anything new this year or different. Slight differences have already been made to change how we do these live streams due to YouTube rules, but that's about it. I still have a desire to do pre-recorded footage. I still find making YouTube shorts relatively automated, so it's not very time consuming or energy consuming to make YouTube shorts. Scheduling them perhaps is a little time consuming, but yeah. So doing the YouTube shorts as they are seems to be as much time and energy as I would be willing to put into YouTube shorts. I don't know if YouTube Shorts are really gaining me any views or subscribers. I have been getting more subscribers recently, and it feels like more views and just more engagement overall. Is that all going to go away in January once people get back into the regular work and school schedules? Who knows? But yeah. The only big change that is foreseeable, I think, for 2024 is if I get tied up into like having to fulfill orders for the smart on-air sign if I start to become really successful there and actually making money. Obviously I have to go where the money is. Like YouTube, for 10 years I've been doing it and they've paid me like $100 once before they kicked all the small content creators out of the YouTube partner program. And now I'm in a situation where I'm in the 700s of subscribers and would need at least 1,000 subscribers and 3 to 4 times as much watch time as I'm getting before I'd even qualify for the new moved goalpost of what is required now to be considered for the YouTube partner program, which is to only say that they'd be considering me too. And I wouldn't be surprised if they absolutely just say no to most new channels, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's yet another adpocalypse just around the corner, as companies aren't doing particularly well and they don't want to spend money on advertising on YouTube. It's probably not going to be as big of a one, but I wouldn't be surprised if that happens just every year going forward. So yeah, having to actually fulfill the smart on-air signs, if I got orders, would take me away from making content. And in general, I think I probably am going to have just one pre-recorded game, at least for the back half of 2024, and not try to have 2 time slots filled with pre-recorded games, because I just didn't get around to making enough footage for that to work. So yeah, 2024 could be a slow year. Of course, random things can happen, everything can change, and at any point I might one day just have to stop making content altogether, even these live streams, and I may just go radio silent if some kind of emergency happens. Perhaps I should change the way I stream a little bit and just schedule in a bathroom break for as often as I actually do need to go to the bathroom in the middle of these streams. Something about just sitting upright for an hour versus lying down or having just woken up a lot of times when I start to stream. But even if I did schedule it, then it would be just a break in a lot of cases too that wouldn't really work, because I'm like, I don't know if anybody can really force themselves to go to the bathroom if they need to, but I can't. I've never been in a situation like that. And even if I did, I would just, it wouldn't matter. I'd need to go again 20 minutes later. A big thing certainly is the fact that I'm just having to drink tons of water to continue to talk. There was a fairly successful YouTuber that put their first video of the year out saying that they're going to stop making videos as frequently, which, okay. I mean, I guess that's one way to go about it. But honestly, it feels like you should have done that December 31st and just said, hey, in 2024, things are changing. Because inherently, you don't want to be in a situation. It sounds better to say, I'm going to make less videos on December 31st and make that the last video of 2023 than it does to make a video that could be your only video for 2024 that says I'm gonna stop making videos. And inevitably this YouTuber isn't just completely leaving YouTube and making no content. He's still making a ton of content. He's just saying, he's just being kind of clickbaited as far as the title. Clearly, if I was going to have to play this style deck more often, I need counter spells. I need something that counters them doing damage. Okay. 6,000. Putting that face down like that actually loses its usefulness, but I'm hoping they think it's a dangerous trap, and I'm also hoping that there's some reason why they can't activate their plans. But their plan seems to be just to summon the Blue Eyes alternate and attack me directly. Maybe this card could save me. If he does a 3,000 attack to me, but if he gets a Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon that does 4,500 attack, couldn't activate the card anyways. Suppose I could say for the new year, I'd love to see that I very quickly in the early part of this year was somehow so incredibly successful that I got into the YouTube Partner Program, started to see a few $100s a week, if not every couple days in views, which is just not likely. Like, it's not likely even unless I became somehow super successful. I just don't think there's you get that much ad revenue. Like, if I could get $1,000 a week, that would be great. That would be a reasonable living wage. Let's see. Well, I think we can just do this. Of course, it's just as reasonable that I would win like the Publishers Clearinghouse $5,000 a week, or win the lottery or something like that. And they would give me. I mean, it's just as likely you'd be successful on YouTube than it is. I'd say those odds are both approaching zero, so much that you really shouldn't have any faith in it at all. It's more likely or you have better odds of being successful if there was instead just more competition to YouTube. Some new service came out, it was willing to pay much higher amounts. Kick, I guess, is kind of an example of that, if you're willing to just like be a Twitch streamer that's supporting a gambling site, which we may all just get pulled into the mud as far as content creators, and we may all be doing things on sites like Kick instead. And see, all that extra work for 2 stinking cards that I already have. Yeah. What a waste of time. Meanwhile, I just have no desire now to even go back and play one game with my regular deck and try and move up ranked, when that's what I should have been doing for the past hour and a half. A secret mission has appeared. Secret missions? Win with a first turn kill 5 times. I thought I had already done all of the secret missions. Maybe they added some new secret missions. Here, this secret mission was to gain 10,000 life points, or 100,000 life points, and that gets you kind of a pathetically small amount of gems, 200, for the amount of time that took. And I guess I literally am going to have to just play one game here, because I'm not accomplishing any of the other daily quests otherwise. But I certainly don't like it. I don't like that I have to play another game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's not something you really want to have to say. Yeah, I guess I almost never go first. So, trying to win with the first turn in a rank for special duel, it's just not likely to happen. A lot of video game sites are doing New Year events, New Year cards, New Year tweets, when they weren't so much focused on any Christmas cards, Christmas tweets. Which, okay, I guess I could see how you might want to endorse the general concept of New Year's and put all your attention into that and not have to do a Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas, Happy Holidays thing. But in really you can just say Happy Holidays if you're trying not to endorse a specific religious event. And if you said Happy Holidays, that would include New Year's, in my mind at least. It feels like any video game company that didn't say at least Happy Holidays, but then did a Happy New Year's tweet is going to potentially be called out by somebody for intentionally excluding the holidays in general. Of course, there are definitely people who have been ranting for decades, or a decade plus now, as far as people not saying specifically Christmas. So you lose no matter what. But those people are fairly unreasonable anyway, and always were. LibRetro says that a new RetroArch release is coming soon. The last one was September 22nd, RetroArch 1.16. Although they really haven't tweeted anything fairly recently other than this LibRetro court for Vercon. The Vercon 32 is a new game console created from scratch. It's a 32-bit system. So I've never heard of this console, and I don't know if it really exists in any physical form or if it only exists as a concept or something you have to build yourself. A 32-bit console in modern days doesn't make a lot of sense. It is an interesting idea, I suppose, as far as if you were going to try and make a new console yourself. If you're not a company that has like millions of dollars of development budget behind it, such as Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, what could you really achieve there? Certainly we've seen small devices that that usually just do 8-bit or maybe 32-bit graphics and are mostly just emulators for the NES or the Game Boy. Things like that. Still don't think I played enough cards to get all the daily quests done, so we'll play another game. But yeah, if you were going to build something completely from scratch, I would question if you would want to do the AMD 64 instruction set or the x86 instruction set, 8086 or 486 or 586 or 686 instruction sets that Intel had before AMD 64. And honestly, there's no reason you really would do an x86 instruction set. You just do an AMD 64 instruction set if you're going to go that route. And then you could play PC games to some extent, but not really, because you still would need either Proton and something like SteamOS and Linux on top of it, or you would need Windows on top of it. So if you were going to ignore all of that, you would almost certainly instead use a reduced instruction set, ARM-based instruction set that you would have more on cell phones, and then you would build some kind of cell phone power energy efficient thing, which that might be a mistake if you're specifically building a console for gaming. So yeah, I'd imagine what you could do, if without just blowing your budget, is I think the framework laptops have an AMD CPU now. If they don't, you would take their Intel CPU and you would take one of those framework laptop hardware, and then you would shove that into a box and make it a console. That would be about your best solution. Certainly you could try to build a computer and build your own motherboard and solder on a AMD or Intel chip to it. But in the end, it really would just be a computer. You can't get into the specialties and the extra coding and the extra programming that an Xbox Series X or a PS5 have, where they have the RAM talking to each other a lot better and a lot more optimized. And for the most part, PS5 and the Xbox Series X are just computers anyway, so they just have a custom operating system on it. And then that's another thing, if you're going to build your own console, that would just be a real hassle. just a lot of reinventing the wheel that you would have to do if you were going to build a new console that would just raise the price higher and higher. And yeah, at a certain point, as the price goes up, you probably would need to be somebody like Microsoft or Sony. I do think, theoretically speaking, in 2024, you could see a new player enter the field as far as hardware. There really is no reason why Amazon.com or Apple haven't jumped into the market as far as game consoles. Apple in particular could have done it a long time ago if they just cared about gaming, and inherently I think Apple may at some point decide they need to care about gaming to maintain their audience of current kids who mostly want Apple phones, because kids are eventually going to say, well, I have an Apple phone, but then I'm going to transition over to a Microsoft based console or a Sony based console. And then if they go to a Microsoft based console, then they're going to have reason to get a Windows PC, and that's where potentially Apple would lose their audience. I could see teenagers eventually getting tired of Apple phones and saying, hey, I'm gonna move over to a Android phone, although that wouldn't really change or push them into using a Windows PC any, or an Xbox Series X. Is there another company, I guess is the question. I could see Samsung trying to come out with a video game console. It wouldn't be the craziest idea ever if Samsung did something like that. I don't know if anybody else would come out with it. I could also see Sony giving up on the PlayStation branding, or even competing against itself on the PlayStation branding, and looking for some kind of Sony Xperia game console that's a portable cell phone thing that's not labeled as being from the PlayStation Sony Interactive Entertainment department. If anything, I would say it is actually rather surprising that there haven't been more attempts for consoles other than, say, the FPGA emulators like the Analog, or Atari's terrible attempt at making a new console, or the Playdate, which was a terrible idea as far as a console. Cell phone manufacturers in general have kind of dropped the ball on making good hardware, but that could easily change, and we may see eventually the standard CPU inside of a cell phone being more than capable of playing very high quality games. If that does become the case, then the idea of consoles might eventually just go out of the way out of the window completely, and we may just all have something we call something like a console in our pockets as a cell phone. Cell phones as devices to text and make phone calls with are increasingly becoming antiquated as far as the way of thinking of them like that, and they are really much more now the things we check our Facebooks with, play video games on, and just have in general. If anything, we're starting to get into the point where people are just having cell phones like people have watches, and then they're very rarely even using them, or less using them slightly less. Do this. I'm hoping I've done enough now to do all the daily quests, or at least most of them. As far as other form factors go, though, as far as consoles, I don't think we've really cracked any new ideas as far as just. Let's see if I activate this. What would I be tossing? I don't know. Yeah. A smartwatch that could be a game console's probably still ridiculous. A smaller than a cell phone screen that could be a game console is probably pretty ridiculous, and cell phone screens in general are just getting bigger and bigger, and there is clearly a desire to have a big screen but still keep it in a pocket, which was always the limitation on Game Boys and Nintendo consoles, is that they wanted it to be something you could put in a pocket while having as big of a screen as possible. So we're really not going into any kind of form factors. Laptops, still not really a thing. Game Boy gaming laptops, still really not advisable as far as the kinds of things that you could purchase. I would still heavily recommend either building a computer yourself or buying a pre-built, but even pre-built are generally rip-offs. Having somebody else build a computer for you, if you have a friend who actually knows how to build computers, still puts you in a good place. I still would recommend an Intel and Nvidia setup, even though AMD has been offering some new features. Part of the AMD's features are, frankly, in my experience, dangerous overclocking and automatic overclocking that has led to instability and frustration on my part. So I'd much rather have a, for the most part, not overclocked Intel CPU than an AMD CPU that's going to push it to the limits and past the limits. You're still in a case where buying DDR4 in bulk and having 32 to 128 gigs of DDR relatively fast RAM is probably better than getting a DDR5 stick, particularly if you're only getting one DDR5 stick instead of dual channel or quad channel DDR5 sticks. Select a card to be sent to the graveyard. I guess that's going to the graveyard. But yeah, you're probably a little late at this point to consider buying a RTX 3080, but if you're mostly targeting 1080p at 60 frames per second, which is still where I think most people should be targeting, that's not, a 3080 is probably perfectly fine. If anything, I suspect 2024, much like 2023, might have fairly fairly low amounts of super high demanding good quality games anyways, so pushing forward for 4080 is probably not going to be necessary. I imagine they might announce a 5080 and 5000 series of graphics cards that are going to be fairly similar to the 4080s this year. The 4070 might be better than a 3080, so I'd have to research that more to be certain. But yeah, going to 2K is definitely going to be a compromise decision for most people unless you have an unlimited budget, and going to 4K or 8K is very much the direction of having an unlimited budget as far as building a PC this year. Now, a lot of that is going to inherently come down to just, do you want 4 monitors that would show all 4 1080p monitors that would show 4 different parts of one game, or do you want one giant 2K monitor or 4K monitors? Because you could pretty much have 4 monitors all going at 1080p on a PC and just have one of those monitors do a 1080p of gaming. That's what I do. Like, I'm looking at one 1080p screen with Yu-Gi-Oh, and above it, that monitor is TV actually, which smart TVs still are fairly cheap and fairly valuable to use as monitors instead of using higher resolution monitors. Of course, I'm also looking at large TVs that are far away. If they were right in front of my face, I might have a bigger problem with them. But yeah, I have Yu-Gi-Oh on one monitor, I have video game news and Firefox on a second monitor, and then on the third monitor I have OBS, the recording streaming software I'm using, just making sure everything's going on, and that works perfectly fine with, I believe I have a 2080 graphics card, and I'm not looking to really replace it. If I was going to replace anything, I'd replace the whole thing. Ah, man, but I've really got to go to the bathroom now, so I think I'm going to just have to lose here. The good news is it looks like I'm going to lose anyways, so let's see what happens. Yeah, let's just save this some time in this window. So many menus I have to get through. Alright, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. So, did we get enough of the daily quest done? Weirdly, no. But honestly, at this point, I kind of just don't care. Maybe I'll play a little bit off screen, maybe I'll just miss out on some daily quests. Somehow, in that last game before I took the bathroom break, I did not special summon anything. It says I did not XYZ summon anything, which that's absolutely not accurate. And I didn't link summon anything. Yeah, none of that makes sense. That's all wrong. I did do several of those things. And yet, it's not being counted. Maybe there's a bug going on. I don't know. And I don't care at this point. Like, I'm not gonna spend more energy going back and trying to play more Yu-Gi-Oh! As we're now 2 hours into the stream. In the same way, I'm probably never going to make any progress on the proficiency either, just because I'm never going to build a deck to fusion summon and meet those requirements. Here we'll change the backdrop from the Christmas to the New Year's backdrop, which they definitely are consistent in theme here as far as these little Oni characters celebrating the events. Yandere Simulator of Yandere Dev. I saw he put a YouTube video addressing the allegations against him that, frankly, allegations against him have been around for at least 2 or 3 years. Now he makes a decent excuse to say that his mental health was just declining more and more, and that's why all the other allegations against him in the past he's dealt with very poorly. And I would say his video is actually very good. He actually puts his face on camera, which is perhaps the first time he's ever even done that. But inherently, Yandere Simulator is a dead concept that nobody wants to support, and even he really admits that due to him being involved in it. So, plus the game concept, which would have been interesting 5 years ago when it first started making rounds and people were playing the demos of it. Like, 5 years have passed. It's too late now. You'd have to take some very generic concepts from Yandere Simulator and remake everything from scratch otherwise, and it still probably wouldn't work because the generic concept, I don't think, fully is going to work. I was watching a non-YouTube video game content maker, a YouTuber that doesn't make video game content, and he was also talking about how YouTube is just getting worse as far as how much they're paying for ad revenue, and how YouTube Shorts is perhaps part of the problem there, in that more and more people are being pushed to look at YouTube Shorts, or people are just choosing to look at YouTube Shorts, and thus it's taking away a finite number of views that YouTube will ever get. I would imagine that the overall number of views YouTube gets before Shorts and after they introduced Shorts stayed pretty much the same. They didn't all of a sudden have way more views popping up. And from my own personal experience, yeah, I'm not really going to people's channels and checking out their other content when I click on somebody's shorts. I am perhaps clicking on more people's shorts, but it's not leading me to subscribe to people or watch people's channels or their other content. It doesn't seem like there's a suggestion algorithm connection there at all when there perhaps should be. But yeah, I personally, though, it does seem like I get a few more views. I definitely would like to see like comments and feedback for lots of things, but one of the things would be, hey, I came to your channel because I saw a short of yours and I subscribed to your channel because of that. But yeah, let's go ahead and cover the video game news. Video Games Chronicle says Square Enix president is going to be aggressive says that Square Enix will be aggressive in applying AI. In the short term, our goal will be to enhance our development productivity. Now, inherently, Square Enix has always been in this bad position for the past many years, in that the Japanese departments of Square Enix are small and not staffed enough to be that productive. So at best, they're making Final Fantasy VII Remake in one department, and then another department is making whatever the newest Final Fantasy game is, which would be Final Fantasy 16, I believe, is the most recent one. Final Fantasy 16 went in a weird direction and didn't seemingly get the attention of the Japanese audience enough that it would become a long-running, well-supported game of the Final Fantasy. Now, also, I imagine there's a department that does Final Fantasy Online. That seems like that's still doing fairly well. But Square Enix's ambitions in the past has been to have more than 2, maybe 2.5 successful games, and so they often were leaning on the makers of Tomb Raider, Crystal Dynamics, and Hitman. Well, those companies are out from under the thumb, and that is the appropriate term, of Square Enix now, so they can't lean on any success there, nor can they really blame their failures on the foreigners, which Square Enix was very public and very rude about that as far as their management style, in that they were always disappointed in everything any of the departments did, even the Japanese departments. Square Enix, I believe, lives in a fantasy that it is a way more successful company than it is at the moment. It may in the past have been way more successful. So now, with this news, the idea that they're going to use AI, it is scrambling to the bottom as far as quality once again, in the hopes that they can make more money or spend less money in development. Oh, speaking of spending less money in development, in the last stream I talked off the cuff without the news article in front of me about how I believe one of the leaks said that Sony now considers a $500 million budget game to be a average for a AAA. I said 500 million several times. The article actually said 100 million, so I was off. I shouldn't talk about numbers without the story in front of me. I frankly shouldn't talk about stories without the story in front of me, because I will get facts wrong, and that's bad reporting, certainly. But I did want to correct that. But yeah, Square Enix, I think, may have a new president, but it doesn't seem like he's doing anything amazingly different at the moment. And inherently, a new president in a Japanese company like Square Enix doesn't mean much, because they tend to do exactly the same thing that the previous president wanted to do, to honor the previous president and give reverence to him. So maybe if the previous previous president died, then you might see some changes, but I bet not. I think Square Enix has probably got multiple layers of upper management that are all fairly old Japanese people that have an old way of doing business and an old style of thinking, and they think if they just keep on doing the same old, they will succeed, and when they don't succeed, they just blame the subordinates, which is also a very Japanese thing, is that the lower subordinates are supposed to fall on their swords and take the blame, even when it is not due to any action of the subordinates. Square Enix is in a weird position because while they do have Final Fantasy, they are increasingly losing esteem amongst even other Japanese game developers, and there aren't that many characters that they can play with as far as their lineup. You can't take a character from Final Fantasy VII and then spin them off and make a Chocobo Racing Mario Kart game and have it work the same way you can take Mario from any Mario game, Mario Odyssey, and put him in Mario Kart. Which is really what they should have done in the past, is that there should have been a lot of spin-offs of the well-received characters, but the Final Fantasy series are all too serious for you to make light-hearted spin-offs of those games. And they're in many of the Final Fantasy games, I believe, are Chocobo Racing events, but they're inside these giant Final Fantasy games instead of being spin-off side games that you could put out to just try and gain a different kind of audience. And outside of Final Fantasy, they really don't have any characters I can think of that they can lean on. We might see, like, the best thing you might see from Square Enix is that it would just acquire Konami and then become this mega corporation that owns Final Fantasy and Metal Gear games, but they still really wouldn't do anything. There really isn't a lot, in my opinion, to say about using AI, though. It is just a buzzword. It's something a president says on a speech because he has nothing else to say, and he's just trying to get his shareholders' prices to go up, because their AI just doesn't really exist to that level at the moment. There's just nothing to it, like. And we're going to see that, if anything, 2024 is going to be the beginning of seeing why AI does not work and why AI does not exist to the level that they are talking about. We went from basically 2022 being a year in which you would say AI in a sci-fi show, as far as the Skynet Terminator AI that can think for itself and can take actions, to 2023 somehow magically saying that exists, and it just really doesn't. We have large language modules that can guesstimate what the next words should be in a sentence, and they do kind of a remarkable job in pretending like there's intelligence there and making something that looks good by simply stealing everything on the internet and copying and pasting elements of the internet. That's not intelligence, that's just figuring out the most reasonable way to copy and paste something that somebody else wrote. There's no intelligence at all in it. And when you get further and further down the direction of needing to actually create something creatively and not just steal something that already exists, AI is going to increasingly fail. And I've heard some rumors now that they're saying that the AIs are just increasingly getting worse and worse, because they could not grow anymore. Like, we may have had a small leap in the technology, but I think we're going to plateau at that leap. We're just as likely to plateau at that leap in technology for years, if not decades, as we are to see it just exponentially grow. And inherently, people who worship, whether it's real worship or or just a thought process of nearly worshipping at the altar of AI, were fully expecting AI to just exponentially grow over and over again until it did get to the point where there was real intelligence there. And there are definitely people who are expecting AI to get to that point just magically, to the point where then the AI can do magical things, like cure death and keep rich people alive forever, solve all the world's problems. And yeah, it, in a lot of ways it is just creating a god that does not exist, or the myth of a god that does not exist. So yeah, my heavy bet for 2024 is we're going to see more people claim to use the AI, and we're going to start to see the first games made with AI come out. Seriously made games, not just troll games that people use ChatGPT to write scripts for, but we're going to see people who seriously thought they could make a game using AI put out a serious game, and it's going to fail miserably once we start to play it. On top of which, I imagine we're going to see increased pushback. This end of the year of 2023, seeing just massive amounts of layoffs and creative people who make video games being laid off, is, I think, going to push even your average gamer who just wants to play games to a point where they will actively be willing to boycott games made with AI. I would say now is the time definitely to call to boycott Square Enix games anyways. They're not good anyways. But yeah, any company that says they're going to be using AI should be considered for a boycott, if not boycotted by default. This one's not actually a video game company as far as New Year's, but Larry Herb, formerly known as Major Nelson's, said Happy New Year, which it does seem like more and more he's just becoming he's trying to be a Twitter celebrity than anything else. Platinum Games put out a Happy New Year card. Let's see what YouTube creators put out. Some nonsense, I'm fairly certain. Ready to like and subscribe to 2024 3 hours ago. And then with 2023 coming to an end, what are your funniest bloopers, most viewed videos? The title you're most proud of. Let's see, pointing down. Again, what's your mantra from 2024? Any new gadgets for Christmas, I suppose? Just desperate attempts at engagement from YouTube creators. And when you see these level of desperate attempts at engagement from YouTube creators on Twitter, it only echoes the desperate attempts at engagement that content creators on YouTube are feeling the need to do. Although perhaps increasingly there are a lot of content creators on YouTube that are feeling more of a desire to just give up on YouTube at this point. And yeah, at a certain point, probably there is a case that some generations of YouTube content creators should just retire. There is no retirement plan, though. There is no pension. But if new creators are going to succeed, older creators would need to go away. But yeah, it's still not going to really work if that happened. Now, Gamatsu has just combined, and I'll reload this page just to make sure I have the newest update on it. Game Industry's New Year's 2024 card messages. They've apparently taken tweets because the Twitter API is no longer allowing you to just embed tweets, and they've just collapsed them. Of course, the problem here is that they are all in Japanese. Let's see, if I was to click on all of these, and then click my, not that button, I need to get rid of that button. Let's see. We'll click my translation thing. So you could scroll down all of these, but it seems like they are not getting any of the pictures. So then I'd have to click on all the pictures. So we see an example here of, well, Fate Grand Order from Aniplex has a whole video that Twitter has made the process of collecting and re-reporting, reposting news way worse. Or X has done that, and Elon Musk has done that. I suspect Twitter and Elon Musk will just get worse and worse. Or he'll get kicked out of Twitter and leave. He almost has to leave for something else. So, yeah. It's hard to engage with, certainly. There's a lot of pictures here I wanted to show off, and I can't really do it. So, instead of wasting time scrolling here pretending like I'm reading all of these, let's just leave it at that. And then Gematsu also has an article here that the ESRB has rated Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC, which I don't think it was particularly a secret that an enhanced edition was coming. The concern I have certainly is right now I own Little Nightmares, but I don't own all the DLC, and I would like to own all the DLC. Had I not bought a refrigerator, I would have hoped that I would have thought of purchasing that. So my concern here is, here's a game, like many games I own, that might come out with an enhanced edition, and then I might feel a need to buy a game twice, even though I haven't even played it once, or I play the older version, and then it doesn't look as good. Yeah, that's the problem of having so many games in backlog. Now the hope, though, would be that people who own the game on PC get the enhanced edition for free. And while that was the case several years ago, I think increasingly we're starting to see it become standard that isn't how it goes down. And instead they try to resell even Steam players and make them buy enhanced editions with mini games not particularly justifying the enhanced editions very well, because a lot of games are putting out enhanced editions 4 years after the original version came out, and it is a minimal bump in resolution and graphics quality. It's not a full-on remaster or remake of a game. And then ScumVM, I believe they promised they were going to put out a new version, and so they put out a new version on the 30th of December with version 2.6.0, and with this release called Mysteries, Mammoth, and Muppets, 50 new games are now supported. So, like, several Nancy Drew games, 14 AGS titles not named, but yeah, altogether they've introduced 50 new games and 5 new engines, which they definitely are at this point where the ScumVM is supporting way more games on different engines other than the Scum engine. They also merged with the Backyard Sports Online project, which makes it possible to play backyard football, backyard baseball 2001, backyard football 2002 over the internet with other humans. They've speed optimized the graphics, and the RetroArch port is being properly rewritten, and the port is now part of their own source code, which means no longer a separate port. Our Atari port has also been redone from scratch. It'd be very weird to be playing Scum games on an Atari, but whatever. Yeah. So yeah, major improvements on something that you would think really couldn't be improved anymore, and yet ScumVM continues to manage to be a healthy group of open source programmers. I believe they're open source. The one improvement I think they need to probably make for 2025 though is it's time to redo the graphics on the website. Like, the orange theme is old-fashioned. The text here could scale a lot better. Notice how wide this page is. Now, I will applaud them doing a good job of taking up most of the screen space, but clearly these should scale up to be slightly larger font scale and take up a little bit more space that way. They probably should make their PayPal donations a little bit bigger. Probably should see if it really matters to have Facebook or Twitter buttons. And the whole art here, just all of this could use a revamp for a more modern style. Either a white theme or dark theme, probably both. I think websites in general now need to really have both. They probably need to take these pictures here and expand them quite a bit, so that it includes games that aren't just made with the Scum engine, because there is definitely a longer list of characters now. Sam and Max and Day of the Tentacle, and I couldn't even really tell you what this game is from. I think this might be Monkey Island. This is Maniac Mansion in the background here. But yeah. Adding 50 new games, though, it is also probably worth mentioning that these are fairly old games that it'd be nice historically to go back to them, but they're not games you'd inherently want to play if you haven't ever played them before. Might Magic Book 1 or Muppet Treasure Island or Nancy Drew games, or things that you have to really have some nostalgia for. Some of these first generation Nancy Drew games to want to play. Whereas some of the games like Day of the Tentacle and point and clicks, I think newer generations of people can still play and find enjoyment in. Particularly since there isn't really that much competition for point and click adventure games in modern time. Irreverent, silly point and click adventure games in particular. It's a shame with Disney acquiring George Lucas's LucasArts Productions and all of that, that they haven't done anything to license out or make new point and click adventure games of that sort. Disney, by the way, seemingly finally has lost the copyright on Steamboat Willie, but I don't think that's really going to be a snowball effect where you start to see every single Mickey Mouse cartoon losing its copyright over the next few years. Over the next few decades, yes. The better chance and the better thing that really should happen is that the Library of Congress in the United States should nullivate a lot of Disney's copyrights just because they're too old. And in general, Library of Congress should nullivate a lot of people's copyrights in general. They probably wouldn't do that. They might expand free fair use, and that would work too as a general concept. Team Nicholas had a happy new year as far as their games. Binding of Isaac characters and others. And then Censored Gaming still kind of on a tear as far as tweeting. So a major earthquake occurred and caused a big tsunami at 6:10 Japanese Standard Time. It's interesting. You hover over. How did that pop up? Oh. Why does it do that? That's interesting. Anyways, so yeah, a major earthquake happened in Japan. Thoughts and prayers. He put in Japanese, I hope everyone is safe. I guess maybe this is the translation. But before that, he talked about the ESRB rating, and summary has been revealed for the 1,000 Years Paper Mario 1,000 Year Store, which I imagine it's going to get a similar rating to what it had originally. I doubt it's going to change that much. And then he put out this. Let's see, let's go ahead and just turn that off. Yeah, that's my plugin that was doing that, popping up the original version of what was being said. He put out another video on the 30th, so he's just like putting out one every day instead of staggering things. In all fairness, I think because my YouTube channel was deleted the second time last year, the Swapper episode 1 was supposed to premiere, and I'm gonna have to double check to make sure it actually did premiere, because I just saw that the Swapper episode 2 just came out. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if I missed the fact that once again all the premiered scheduled videos got unscheduled once my channel was deleted. I thought I checked that, but whatever. So yeah, the episode may have aired out of order. This video I did watch, Grand Blue Fantasy in English, adds this internet leet speak localization changing of the what was being said, and they add this phrase like simpers be simping or something amongst 3 characters in a cutscene, when in Japanese they just said scratch that, forget what I just said, and Nanda I think was the word, but yeah, just kidding. You often see that translated to just kidding, where a character will say something outlandish or silly and then say just kidding. In no way were what they saying being anywhere close to simpers be simping, as if that's even really a phrase in English. So increasingly we still are seeing these ridiculous localization choices where localizers think that they're creative or interesting or funny, and often are putting in a stupid kind of SJW, for lack of a better term, mentalities or ideologies. I was listening to one podcast and one person literally said, "That's not to say that I'm against censorship or that we shouldn't censor video game language." And I'm like, "What? How can anybody make that statement just so blatantly that you're pro censorship?" I guess mentally I'm just so far from that yes, I know there are pro censorship people from that, but they generally are smart enough to phrase it in different ways instead of just saying, "Yeah, I'm straight up for censoring video games." And yeah, this is still censorship, even if it's being done for a different reason. It's giving the English players, a experience that they didn't ask for and didn't want, that is different from what the Japanese players are getting. And at a certain level, it's kind of not surprising that Japanese games are not as popular. Like, this literally might just be an effort in the back of the minds of some of these localizers to make sure that Japanese games never gain that much popularity because by mistranslating them. And I wouldn't be surprised if it happens in other directions and in other countries too, where they actively poorly translate Western content so it's not as well done. Now, China certainly censors like Western movies all over the place, making them much less quality. But they have other reasons, obvious reasons. Apparently also in the Japanese version of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, a board game was redesigned and renamed because it was likely because of a copyright concern due to Capcom's Gundam franchise. Which, okay. I wish there was more details here since there's no video attached to this. Let's see if we can see where we are. All of this is still in English, and the art on the board looks like a Gundam clone. And then we've got just this like logo. And then I would imagine this is the Japanese one. And then slightly different version of a Gundam clone. But the rest of the game does still seem to be mostly in English as far as all the button presses and everything else. So yeah, this one says Gundam 95, this one says Go Dragon. But yeah, I would guess they just felt like there was they probably, if this really is the case, that they didn't have the rights to Gundam in Japan, but they somehow did have the rights to Gundam in the West, that's fairly unlikely. It's probably a case where they just made something called Gundam without getting the rights at all. If that's really the case, I wouldn't be surprised if there's just a completely different situation. Although it is fairly common that there have been negotiations where things like Gundam might be licensed outside of Japan, and then the negotiation to license it inside of Japan is just completely different. And we'd already covered some of this other just 2 or 3 posts every day, although it's fairly quality content. As far as we still don't really know what the actual differences of the Switch version for Yuna and the Haunted Hot Springs will be. So yeah, this is kind of a premature post that he could have waited on until he got more information. This is definitely a premature post. It doesn't even have any relevance, so holding on to this until you have nothing else to post would have made a lot of sense. Whereas this is a newer game, so it makes sense this is a newer game. Excuse me. And then the thoughts and concerns as far as all of that is fair enough if he wants to talk about that. Wow, we're already at 3 hours, so we're in a weird position. Now, the good news is that there isn't actually that much news. The bad news is that either I go through all the games that came out last stream, or I don't. And yeah, I guess go through all of them. Now, inherently, I haven't gotten back to do any of the follows cleanup. I almost would say yes to this pin and marker art style if it was a little bit more consistent. I don't know why anybody tries to draw with this pen and marker art style. I don't even know how you would really do this in Photoshop. This really feels like somebody, like a Westerner in my opinion, we'll see what language this is, English, literally has just grown up drawing with markers and in not drawing particularly well. There is a real skill gap, and if I was the president of the United States or something, I would definitely make some push as far as the Department of Education to say, hey, we have an entire generation or two of very poor artists in the United States compared to, say, Asian countries like Japan, who have kids growing up drawing nonstop. And like, we did not trade our artists for generations to be better authors and write great American novels either. I wouldn't say that there's a surplus of great American authors. So the whole push towards more writing, if anything, probably just created less of a focus on the arts of many kinds, but in this case drawing, and did not move to anything. The push to science and STEM stuff that's happening right now is also probably hurting arts of other cases too. But this is the final outcome. You have people who can't draw making low effort visual novels, or visual novels of some sort. I won't even call it low effort, that just look terrible. And we need to try to not have that continue to another generation. Individually, I would heavily recommend all parents heavily encourage kids to draw. Like, for every writing project they have in school, you should probably have encouragements as far as drawing or other art styles, whether it's making things in clay or painting or something artistic should balance off every right brain activity as much as possible. And in my opinion, I'm gonna give this a chance. But yeah, that's, if anything, for just a balanced personal mentality and lifestyle. Like, and frankly, you can get pretty well in life, get along pretty well in life, if you do just have artistic hobbies that never lead to anything, because there isn't a real demand or need to say, I can draw really well, or I can draw decently well, so I'll make a career out of it. it is just a skill and a hobby to have, much more than, say, penmanship and calligraphy, which nobody really cares about. I'd be impressed if I saw someone could draw a picture. I'm not particularly impressed if somebody has decent penmanship or calligraphy. They have to have particularly high levels of calligraphy skills before it would be impressive. Very, very high. It would only be slightly impressive for a minute or two anyways. It's kind of the same way that learning the guitar is a great thing to encourage anybody to learn. Not that you're going to be a musician that is in a highly successful band, that's highly unlikely, but having a guitar, being able to play a guitar, being able to play any musical instrument is fairly impressive, particularly if it's an instrument that can be a solo instrument. Like learning to play a tuba kind of forces you to play in an orchestra, whereas Underground Waifus trading card game here, we have yet another game that probably should be in the adult section just for it to make sense. Visually it doesn't look terrible as a concept, but it's already mixed. But yeah, there is more of an advantage, I would say, in having a guitar than being able to play a tuba or being able to play a piano, where you'd need to carry a piano with you unless you're gonna go keytar, which nobody thinks that's cool. I think overall schools probably should be encouraging more hobbies and activities and less trying to cram kids' brains full of, well, first and foremost, it's just trying to cram kids' brains full of capitalism in general, that you're going to work a job and you're going to have a boss and you're going to obey and do what the boss says, in the same way that you have a teacher and you're expected to follow what the teacher says. But then secondly, they're cramming the kids' brains with math, which is great if you're a mathematician, and really you only need rudimentary math if you're not working in certain levels. Even programming uses fairly little math. There's no major amounts of geometry and algebra you're doing in your average program, depending on what the program does. Reading is extremely subjective, because reading one book is highly unlikely to be that valuable overall in life. Having reading skills in general is helpful, but any specific one book doesn't matter. Here we have another visual novel that seems to be Japanese only. Kind of a different art style in it. So yeah, math, reading, probably a little overemphasized. Depending on the region, athletics and sports, almost certainly overemphasized. Being healthy, underemphasized in favor of playing sports, which inherently athletics, sports, weightlifting, all those things could be healthy activities, but then they are pressed to such an extreme, even at the high school level, that they aren't actually healthy events or hobbies. There's probably not enough focus on science in general, because there's a lot of sciences. There's perhaps too much focus on history, but you do probably want to learn some history too, if you can actually teach it. And if you're actually teaching the true history and not teaching propagandized, heavily propagandized histories. But there overall is just a lot of stuff that could be taught in schools, and isn't taught in schools, and there's a lot of stuff that is taught in schools that potentially shouldn't be taught in schools. Kind of wish we could just get to the point, forget AI, just get to the point where we could download information into brains faster. That would be way more helpful. Particularly, even if it was just a case where information went into people's brains for a temporary amount of time. Here we have another anime girl waifu asset flip garbage game. I'm gonna give this a chance, but this is probably nothing. Yeah, we're really at about the point where there's only 5 games from the last stream that are worth it. And most of these Survivor games, I'm hoping in 2024 we'll stop seeing Survivor clones, Vampire Survivors clones. I'll give this a chance since it just looks a little different. But yeah, more and more I would say in life, in schools, and whatever, the right brain, left brain, this is another one of these Spanish games. There's several of these, I believe, of this series. I wish there was an English translation for them because they look like they are potentially somewhat funny point and click adventure games. But yeah, there's just no way I could play a game that doesn't support English unless there was no dialogue in it at all, which I don't think that is the case. But yeah, for every write a essay, right brain type activity for 30 minutes, you should always, in lifestyle, that's just how the human brain works, move to a left brain activity. And that is something I try to embrace and probably fail miserably, because what happens is I'll go and do more than 30 minutes of programming for my Smart on Air sign, for instance, and then I'll do hours of that, and then I'll eventually get exhausted, and I guess there is some fall-less games I could do some cleanup here for. And after being exhausted for several hours of programming, I can't make a decision. I'll just leave it on the fall list. And then the adult games I won't look at, obviously. Don't want to get in trouble with YouTube again. And then, like, Deadly Renovation Simulation Prologue. Really shouldn't have the prologue on the fall list. Should have this on the fall list. But yeah, even when I do take a break and want to do more of a relaxing, perhaps more creative thing, it's not really that creative. I'll just start watching something on a streaming service, and if I'm watching an episode of Eureka's one flaw is that it takes 45 minutes to watch an episode. It kind of needs 45 minutes for the massive amount of characters. Eureka really does the exact thing Sanctuary should have done, which is to establish quite a lot of characters in that first episode, that first pilot, and then cut down the number of characters that show up per episode, have some characters show up sometimes and then show up later on other episodes. But it really is not realistic to have this giant Sanctuary castle in Sanctuary and have it be run by 5 people, 5 main characters, when there's easily a dozen characters in Eureka, each of which are written well and interesting characters with their own hints at having personalities. I'm gonna, let's see, mini golf game, does it require VR? No. Do I want to play a mini golf game? Is it single player focused? Not particularly. You know what, I'll just put it on the wish list anyways. There's one from August 2023. So there is the argument at this point to removing anything that doesn't have any reviews from that far back. So that's what I'll do. Just trying to do follow list cleanup. Here we have September 2023. I think I can remove that. Dungeon color I can remove because it doesn't really catch my attention and it barely has 30 reviews from 2021. So yeah, my right brain activities are programming for hours, which really should just be 30 minutes, and my left brain activities, I'll give this more time, are watching 45-minute long TV shows, which is not really a productive activity. AI fantasy map maker software makes awesome looking maps. It's in early access from 2022. I think we can remove something like that just because I wouldn't even really use it. Let's see. That's the adult one. And we have a page here that just doesn't want to load. So I close that. And that was the fall list cleanup. So that didn't take as long as I thought it was going to, but now my setup is all broken. Which we can fix that if we go here and then go back here. As far as trending goes, I imagine we have over 1 million 24-hour peak playing Counter-Strike 2. Very high numbers for Counter-Strike 2. And fairly high numbers for Dota 2 and PUBG. And even large numbers in the 200,000s for the next few games. Yeah, usually, though, that it's staying about the same as far as the top 15 being slightly over 100,000. So it feels like fewer people, more people overall were playing the big games over the last 24 hours. But overall, the top 15 are still getting large numbers, and it's not like we're seeing major drop-offs. You see a big drop-off from like Path of Exile to Football Manager 2024. I heavily question at this point whether this information is really showing me anything useful though, particularly with my chart being just so incredibly broken. We are now at a point where I could scrap all of the data and start with just January. And at some point I probably will scrap or just archive the data and update the chart to only show me what started in January 2024, because that is really the thought as far as what the trend is. We are seeing a trend here, significant drop off on a lot of these games at the last day of the year, probably because people were partying, and I doubt it's a case of people swearing off video games. I imagine we'll see this go up some more, but people will be going back to work and school too, so that can change things, although not always in the negative. Like, particularly kids will be, well, not even particularly kids. Once people go back to work and start talking about video games with their video game friends that they have at work or school, that tends to increase the play dates being made and the excitement around playing video games. So most gamers have some gamer friends that act as enablers and encouragers to keep the hype around video games going. Whereas if you're given an extended vacation, you're slightly less likely to play games. But yeah, I still kind of question if this chart is showing me much. And then, as far as Video Games Chronicles go, I think we've probably talked about all their news, and they are slightly back at the job where they did not post anything since the 27th of December. We already talked about AI, and we've already talked about the PlayStation Plus Essential Games and Ghostwire Tokyo and all of that. So then that just brings us to the Gematsu articles, which we had already talked about this. The anime for Witch on the Holy Night, the anime movie, second teaser trailer, has been released. It is now in production. This is, I assume, based off of some kind of visual novel, maybe on the Fate Stay or the Fate series. So many different Fate games, not just Fate Stay Night, but overall. This really is just an anime teaser trailer, not having anything directly to do with the video game. Very colorful, magical animations, particularly when you have an animated movie or an anime movie. They tend to be very large in budget and very nicely polished, and it is often the better way to engage with things instead of watching the TV versions of things, of animes. But often you don't have a choice. The movies are often connected and sequels or prequels to the TV series. The Magical Modica series is perhaps one of the exceptions where there is both a TV version and a movie version of the first season, and the movie version came out later and I think it's a little bit better, although there's slight differences in both, so there's a reason potentially to watch both. And fortunately, anime hasn't gotten down to the point where they are making every series as a TV series, then remaking it as movies and trying to get people to double dip on the series, although I imagine the Japanese animation companies would love if they could pull that off. And then you have things like Neon Genesis Evangelion, where the movie remakes are so far from the original TV series that obviously they're better quality, but then they also really don't make a lot of sense to watch without watching the TV series. One of the earliest of the Neon Genesis movies was kind of a recap of everything that had happened in the TV series up until that point, but I wouldn't say it was the best way to engage in things. But the 1.11 movie of Neon Genesis Evangelion, I don't think watching that exclusively works fully, but you might get away with doing that. I'd have to double check. Yeah, those Neon Genesis movies in particular would be something I'd want to get on Blu-ray or 4K UHD if there are 4K UHD versions of them before they decide to stop making physical discs altogether. course, it's hard to justify purchasing any of those movies when I know I'm not going to ever sit down and watch them. Or probably not. Fate Samurai Remnant DLCs. Records Fragment Kian Command Championship launches February 2024. This is an actual video game. Let's see what we've done with it on Steam. Yep, it's already on my wish list. And Fate Samurai set in an older time frame from most of the Fate games. Most of the Fate animes and things are set in modern time. This is rated very positively. It's an action RPG game. And then we already talked about ESRB rating Little Nightmares. And then Phoenix and Happy Meal, which I assume doesn't have anything to do with McDonald's, announced an adventure game called Quiz Seikai wa Ichinego Ningo presents Atsushi no Matantai for Switch, which I suspect this is a game that's not going to come to the West. This feels like this is a Japanese panel show with a collection of characters of well-known Japanese comedic panelist comedy characters. Let's just see if we can get some more details in the trailer. Yeah, this looks like a really old game, so unless this is a re-release of an old game, I would assume that this is just a really low quality game. Yeah. I severely couldn't imagine that this would come to the West as far as the game goes. And then we have a Chinese style open world action RPG called The Bustling World for PC. Darn it, stupid emojis have made it absolutely impossible to curate anything. Yeah, YouTube's chat in OBS, which having it in OBS is nice and all, but they really have created a terrible system in which if I need to block somebody, I maybe have to change it to top chat. Nope, top chat doesn't work either. Live chat doesn't work. The 3 dots to block somebody. Well, you know what? Clicking on them actually is not doing anything anyway, so whatever. We'll deal with it later. Apologies for the distraction there. There will be a renewed effort, continued here, as far as people posting things that don't seem to be English in the chat. People getting muted, blocked for that. YouTube forces content creators to moderate their chat. Otherwise, I wouldn't censor in such a way. But I can't moderate something I don't know. And if I don't know the language, if you're saying a word I don't know, if you're doing it multiple times, or in comments and in chat, then that's going to set off red flags. But even doing it once, it's probably going to get you muted or blocked. Apologies to the non-English speaking people in the world, but that's YouTube's stupid rules. If YouTube didn't threaten to punish me for what other people say, which is completely unfair and against the Geneva Convention under the ruling of group punishments, then I wouldn't care about it. Speaking of not caring about things, I doubt I'm going to care much about the bustling world either. This art style could be something as far as this thumbnail goes, but overall this feels like this is a very Chinese-centric concept of a game, which we can give that a try, I guess. I definitely would have a hard time, though, playing any kind of Chinese-centric game set in China without heavily going into conversations and opinions and rants about just the terrible state that I personally feel China is in at the moment, which isn't 100% just rah-rah US, rah-rah capitalism. Like, it would be, actually, in my opinion, very interesting if China was this bustling, perfect example of communism and how communism actually worked in one country. Unfortunately, if China is the example of how communism works, then communism, in my opinion, doesn't work. Pure communism. Really, it's just a military dictatorship that's as capitalistic as the United States is anyways. It's an oligarchy hidden in the same way the United States is a hidden oligarchy. Then our last Gematsu article says Japanese creators discuss their 2024 ambitions updated, and again you have just a long list of comments here on Gematsu. So if you just really wanted to read a lot, these two Gematsu articles, this one and the Happy New Year's one, would take up some time, certainly. I question the value in knowing the ambitions of Japanese creators, because while I can applaud the fact that Japanese creators are very ambitious, the difference between their ambitions and what they actually can produce is fairly wide. And so, yeah, there's knowing what an artist wants to create only sets the bar too high for what the final product is, whereas if you expect nothing from an artist and they come out with something decent, most people are going to be overjoyed with the decent creation. And we can look at GameDeveloper.com, but I don't believe they have any new news. Still, like December 28th. So if that virus is continually showing up because of Slay the Spire as post here, or GameDeveloper.com's page in general, well, they haven't posted anything to give any indication that they've been back to work yet. I suppose if a whole week went by and GameDeveloper.com posted nothing, I would at that point suspect that they just very sneakily shut down and stop using them as a news source, which wouldn't be that major of a loss, honestly. GameDeveloper.com has some internal industry information that's interesting, but that's about it. Alright, well, that's going to be it for the stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. Let's see if by the end of 2024 we can get well over 1,000 subscribers and get me back into the YouTube Partner Program. That would be nice. I'd like that to happen before the end of 2024. Certainly, I will take people subscribing to my channel and then never watching any of my content, although I would like people to watch my content also. But yeah, subscribers first is still my main focus, because it's at least impressive to say you have over 1,000 subscribers, whereas saying you have over a certain amount of watch time is less easily explained away. Yep. Anyways, though, thanks for